All right, let's talk about one of the single greatest public health tools ever invented, vaccines. But we're going to start with a really strange, counterintuitive idea, a paradox that's at the very heart of why they've become so controversial today.
So let's just dive right in with a question. And I'm willing to bet the answer isn't what you think it is. Because believe it or not, there is a very real problem with vaccines that we absolutely have to talk about.
And there it is. Seriously, this is the core paradox we're digging into. The single biggest, most challenging problem with vaccines is that they are just unbelievably good at their job. And no, that's not a punchline, it's a real phenomenon. Most of us alive today are so completely removed from the horror of the diseases that our grandparents feared that we just don't see them as a real threat anymore. The solution itself has become way more visible than the problem it solved. So to really wrap our heads around this, we have to do something that's kind of hard to do. We need to turn back the clock and remember what the world actually looked like before we brought these diseases to heal. Let's just take measles. Before the vaccine came along in 1963, millions of kids in the US got it every single year. It was just a normal, expected, and sometimes deadly part of childhood. Then the vaccine arrives, and boom, cases plummet by 95%. The effect was just immediate and absolutely stunning. Okay, just let that number sit with you for a second. 300 million. That's how many people we think died from smallpox in the 20th century alone. A disease that, thanks to a vaccine, we have completely, totally eradicated from the planet.
And it wasn't just smallpox or measles. We're talking about things that were terrifyingly common. Paralytic polio was crippling up to 20,000 people a year, mostly kids. A single outbreak of rubella meant 20,000 babies were born with profound birth defects. This was just normal life.
What's really fascinating is that this core idea isn't even new, not by a long shot. We're talking as far back as the 1500s in China. People were practicing a version of this called variolation, deliberately giving healthy people a mild case of smallpox to make them immune. Yeah, it was risky, but it was way, way less risky than catching it in the wild.
Okay, so with that history lesson fresh in our minds, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the beautiful science of how this technology actually works inside our bodies.
The basic principle here is it's so elegant and simple. A vaccine is basically a training manual for your immune system. It's like giving your body a most wanted poster of a germ, so it can recognize the bad guy and build all its defenses without ever having to go through the actual sickness. And there's more than one way to write that training manual. Some vaccines, like for measles, use a live but super weakened version of the virus. This gives you a really powerful, long-lasting immune response. Others, like the polio shot, use a completely dead version of the virus. It's safer for people with compromised immune systems, but you might need a booster down the line. And then you have the really clever mRNA vaccines. These are kind of brilliant. They don't give you any part of the virus at all. Instead, they give your cells a temporary blueprint, just the instructions, to build one tiny, harmless piece of the virus, like its spike protein. Your immune system sees that protein, goes, hey, you don't belong here, and learns how to fight it. Then your body just breaks down the blueprint. But that memory stays. Okay, so let's zoom the camera out for a second, because getting a vaccine isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about protecting the entire community. It's a social contract. This brings us to a really critical idea: herd immunity. The concept is simple. When enough people in a community are immune to a disease, it just runs out of places to go. It can't spread. This creates a protective firewall that shields everyone, especially the people who are most vulnerable. So who are we really protecting? We're talking about newborn babies who are too young for their first shots. We're talking about our grandparents, friends going through chemo, and people who for legitimate medical reasons can't get vaccinated. For them, the rest of us being vaccinated is their only real line of defense. Okay, but let's talk about the big question on everyone's mind: safety. Right? It's totally understandable to have questions. So let's walk through the absolutely insane level of scrutiny a vaccine has to go through before it ever gets near you. The thing that's crucial to get here is the sheer amount of time and work involved. We're talking 10, 15, sometimes 25 years of testing. It goes through multiple phases with tens of thousands of volunteers. And even after it's approved, this safety monitoring never, ever stops. And there's a really simple reason for all that scrutiny. Think about it. We give medicines to people who are already sick.
But we give vaccines to healthy people, often healthy little kids, to keep them from getting sick. So the safety standards have to be, and they are, incredibly high.
And that brings us full circle, right back to that paradox we started with, the price of success.
I mean, just look at these numbers. They're honestly hard to even comprehend. In the last 50 years alone, vaccines are estimated to have saved over 150 million lives. That's not even counting the hundreds of millions more who are saved from being disabled or seriously ill. The impact is just staggering.
And this is the ultimate truth of the whole thing, isn't it? The very luxury we have to sit here and even debate this, the incredible safety that we just take for granted every single day, it exists because of the very thing being debated. The fact that we've forgotten what these diseases look like is the greatest proof that vaccines work. So that's the final thought I want to leave you with. When you look at our history, when you see the millions of lives that were lost, and the incredible science that changed everything, what's really the bigger risk? Is it remembering the solution we worked so hard to create? Or is it forgetting the problem we so desperately needed to solve in the first place?